Okay, everybody, let's, since we have quorum with Mr. Black, thank you, sir. Let's see, call the meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. on Wednesday, November 5th. First item on the agenda is roll call. So I see Nick is here, Dennis is here, Curtis is here, Virginia's here, James is here, let's see, Paul's here, Christy's here, Debbie's here, Amber's here, Jim Mosier's here, Thomas is here, Tony's here. Okay, and I think Rita's coming late. And then our excused absences are Annie, Chuck, Arlene, Laird, Ruth, Scott, and Katie. I don't think I missed anybody. I think we're good. Okay, second item on the agenda is public comments. Any public comments? No. Okay. On current business, I just want to ask everybody if we could move things along quickly today because we do have this noise element. I don't know how long it's going to take, but let's try to move quickly. If it does go longer, Amber has kindly offered to run the meeting. I have a fire department demonstration thing I have to do at 5, so thank you, Amber, for that. You're like the co-chair now. All right, and then Susan DeSantis has just shown up, and I think Rita is going to be coming in a little bit late. Okay, so seeing no public comments, minutes for September 16th. Can I get a motion to approve those with Jim Mosier's edits? Yes, Paul, thank you. And a second. Okay, Susan, all in favor? All right, any opposed? Okay, we have one abstention with Dennis. Okay, thank you. All right, item 4B on the agenda, the big one for today, draft noise element. This is attachment 2A in your packet, and I'm going to turn that over to Ben.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Appreciate it. So I wanted to go ahead and put some slides up here that we can talk to, and I'd like to have Elizabeth provide an overview presentation and then turn it over to Chair Mosier, who's been hard at work with the subcommittee. I like to coin them as small but mighty because they've met a total of 9 times now, I looked, and that's a pretty hefty meeting load. But only half of those, 5 of them in fact, have been with Dudex consultant support. So I think I'm kind of talking ahead of turn here. But at this point, I think I'd like to turn over to Elizabeth to go over this slide. But just wanted to introduce the item. It was added late to the work program here. But as I said, Chair Mosier, along with his subcommittee, have been hard at work to get you all a solid draft. One thing I'd like to highlight, I don't want to steal Elizabeth's thunder, but the noise element is a little bit different in that it was recently updated by City Council in 2023 as part of the housing element implementation. And this is largely a refresh of an element that was recently amended rather than a complete overhaul as we're seeing with the other elements. So just wanted to kind of couch, not kind of, I am couching this statement with that qualifier. So without further ado, I'll turn over to Elizabeth.
All right, thanks, Ben. And just to kind of add a little bit more context as to what Ben is saying, one of the reasons that this is more of a refresh beyond it being added to this effort at the beginning of this year is that this element was not included as part of our phase 1 engagement. So that's something to consider, that as we're updating the general plan update, a lot of the input that we are incorporating throughout is coming from that outreach and engagement with the broader community. So that's one of the other reasons that this is more of a refresh. Also, before the noise element was added to the general plan update process, our acoustician, which is a word that is challenging for me, but our acoustician did do an analysis of the noise element and made some early recommendations that have guided a lot of our work as well. So those recommendations were to consider new noise sources and update maps as practicable, and to make text changes for clarity. And that assessment is available online. There's, of course, more detail than those 2 bullet points, but that's kind of the gist of it. So yeah, Ben kind of covered. We've been meeting a lot to discuss this element. I think it's come to a really great place. We are on our third draft iteration, so I think I'll just move into kind of walking you through what you can find in this document. So starting with the existing traffic noise contours, this was done through as a result of the modeling that was done. The city provides us with the traffic, and we look at the noise related to that. And then beyond that, when we look at the projected noise, traffic noise contours, that's this one here. This is coming from the general plan housing element traffic. And the reason this is coming from the general plan housing element traffic is because that is based on the traffic at build out of the general plan, because we don't have any land use changes to the land use element. So when you're looking at traffic noise, the key thing that informs the traffic is land use build out. And then the next one. And then the noise contours, these are the noise contours for the airport from the 2014 settlement agreement. And you'll find this map referenced through several policies. This is a map that the city uses for their, in reference to these policies for their planning purposes. But you'll also see that we do have a policy within the element that is proposed to consider future airport noise contours as well. So moving into the goals, as you're all aware at this point, the goals we cover those with the intent of making sure that those are end statements and they're really future leaning. So the goals that have been refreshed, they're largely kind of pieced from the already adopted goals with some small changes there. I would say the biggest change that is really within these goals is to goal N3, and we've expanded this goal. So this goal is a community safeguarded from the adverse noise impacts of operations at John Wayne Airport. And the piece that's been added here is and that proactively responds to and plans for emerging transportation technologies. So this has been a key theme throughout the general plan update process, is thinking in terms of the future technologies, things of that nature. And within this context, we're thinking of like aerial transportation, which, drones and air taxis and things like that, which have been really a topic of conversation since the beginning with all of you. So, kudos to all of you for having this kind of foresight, because it's really carrying through, all these months later. So let's get into the policies. And the policies that we're covering today, these are just entirely new policies. We, of course, update all the policies throughout to make sure that they are starting with an action, and they're meeting the kind of same nomenclature as our other policies in the draft elements. But these are the ones that are entirely new. These are kind of shortened versions of those policies just for the slide itself. So I'll walk you through those really quickly. Policy N311, updated airport noise contours as appropriate. So that kind of goes back to that figure that we discussed a couple of slides ago. Policy 3.12, mitigate emerging aerial mobility systems to the extent feasible. So that aligns with goal 3. Policy 313, direct emerging transportation systems along routes with minimal sensitive uses. So again, kind of aligned with thinking about the future, thinking about future technologies and transportation systems and how they should be sensitive to the community as a whole. Policy 4.8, require noise attenuation for new residential uses in West Newport Mesa focus area. And this is a focus area, of course, that's identified within the land use element. And as changes occur within that area, as and if they occur in that area, then we want to make sure that noise is being considered for new residents. Policy 5.2, limit damage to structures resulting from heavy construction. This policy is more expansive within the element, the draft element itself. And this has been a topic of conversation that's been kind of ongoing because I know that some have maybe had some physical impacts from nearby construction, and this is relying on best practices. 5.3, limit noise from construction activities. And then 5.4, construction noise best practices. And there's a lot of best practices that are actually listed under 5.4. And then there's actually some other proposed language to add to that policy. So with that, I think we'll move on to the next slide. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Ben.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. And I'll pass it off to Jim after this. But as part of putting this on the agenda, the subcommittee chair wanted to provide some additional policy language for the GPAC to discuss and consider. There's reasoning in the memorandum that I've included as part of the agenda packet. I tried to capture the chair's reasoning for suggesting these additions. We're really looking to model some of the best policy practices that the chair and others had found in the city of Long Beach, whose noise element is about 100-something pages. Am I right, Jim? 100-something? Yeah. So he teased out a few policies that are fairly innocuous but may give the city some good policy direction to improve how we talk about noise with the community, what kind of noise resources are available for those who are experiencing issues with noise, and then looking to make sure that we are using the best available technology to monitor and track noise as it progresses in the future. And as Elizabeth alluded to, there's some additional construction bullet points that would be added to the draft policy that talks about best practices for construction sites to help limit and further reduce construction-related noise. So with that, I'd like to have Chair Mosier provide some color, and any other subcommittee members who'd like to talk about this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I guess first I should acknowledge the rest of the Noise Element Subcommittee, which oddly is almost all sitting right here, Tony and Tom and Amber and Debbie and over there, David. And so I'm going to be repeating a few things. This, I think, is familiar to them, but by way of background, it may be useful to note that this is not the city's first noise element. It actually will be the fourth. The first noise element in Newport Beach was enacted in 1974 by resolution number 8366, which was soon after the state requirement to have noise elements was enacted. And then 20 years later, in 1994 was the second noise element. The first one was mostly a noise survey, trying to establish what the noise environment was in Newport Beach. The second one in 1994, adopted by resolution number 94-96, and those resolutions are online so people can see them if they want. That one addressed noise policy, and I think probably was our best noise element. And then in 2006, as part of the comprehensive general plan update, those first two were standalone elements developed on their own. And then in 2006, the current one, which we are refreshing, was adopted. And I think there were some possible problems with that, which I would like to get to. And as been mentioned, the committee started with the idea without a consultant, we were still kind of working towards a comprehensive update and a kind of all-new noise element. And then recently this summer, we learned that the city was on a faster track and needed just to refresh the current one. So in the process of refreshing it, I have recommended, and part of the redlining that you're seeing here is to keep the structure of the current one. Unlike any of the other elements, none of the current policies have actually been deleted, and other ones have been added to it, which is why they had high numbers. And an effort has actually been made here to keep the numbers the same as they are in the current noise element, in case any policies that we had elsewhere referred to them. So it has basically the same structure and looks very much like the current one. As we heard, it's divided into 5 policies or goal areas. The first of those, which you'd find starting on handwritten page 32 of the agenda packet, is focused on policies related to compatible land use from the point of view of project analysis and approval. And then that's followed on page 37 by the second one, which is how we respond to noise from land and water vehicles. And then a page later is the third goal, which responds to aviation noise. And the fourth one, which starts on page 43, is related to non-transportation noise. And the fifth one on page 45 is related to construction noise. And the reason they're separated by so many pages is the main change that DUDEC has made. The current noise element, if you looked at it online, you'll see all the narratives, many, many pages, and then it's followed by all the goals and policies together. They've tried to interleave the narrative that goes with a particular goal, followed by that goal and policy, and so forth for the 5 sections. Ben probably won't be too happy with me for doing this, but I still have further revisions that I think are needed, and perhaps the entire GPAC can look at that. I should explain that the red line that you're seeing here is not a red line from the current noise element, but it's a red line from DUDEC's original revised draft of it, which our committee first saw on September 15th. And at that meeting, we mostly talked about the noise survey that they had done, which is documented in a separate document that you do not have before you tonight. And then we actually talked about these policies just a couple of weeks ago on October 21st. And there's further redlining here that none of us had seen before Friday when this was posted. So I think there are perhaps some additional changes that still need to be made. And I wanted to start with the figures, which is what we did at our first meeting. And so these are on the foldouts here on handwritten page 47. One of the main objectives we've been hoping for was updated noise contours. A minor point, the first one here called figure 1, existing traffic noise contours, should actually be figure N1 rather than just figure 1 because it's referred to as N1 elsewhere. We asked for this because the current noise element said that the contours in it were essentially out of date and needed to be updated. When I read the document of how these are arrived at, it's a little bit disappointing because it's using the housing element, which itself had traffic figures that are somewhat arbitrary in it, and it had done a noise analysis and produced numbers. It's hard to tell from the document whether there was any different conclusion here than that one. Also, the list of streets that are shown is somewhat arbitrary. So you will see here like Jamboree and noise contours flowing off of that into the East Bluff area. But it doesn't show the noise that comes from like East Bluff Drive. In the Santa Ana Heights, it doesn't show the noise that comes from Birch Street. So it's not really the comprehensive map of the noise environment that you'd expect. And exactly what traffic assumptions it's based on are a little bit hard to tell. The second one, which is on the back of that page, it took me some time to figure out what GPHE meant. And even knowing what that means, it's still not quite clear what that means. But this map, which should be labeled figure 2 should be figure N2, and I think the label should be clarified. This is the general plan housing element build-out contours, I think is what this is trying to show. I would not guess that from the GPHE. So I think it could have a clear label to what it is. And then that's followed by and you'll notice that that's showing we have existing traffic conditions, we have future traffic conditions. The state code for preparing noise elements expects us to do the same for aviation. So on handwritten page 49, we have a picture of airport contours that's not very well explained what it is. It says it came from the 214 settlement agreement. What it is a projection made in 2014 of what the noise from the airport was projected to look like in the year 2030. And this is the one that the city has been using for planning purposes in the airport area. I have no qualm with that, but I think this should be labeled as the 2030 projection, which is what it is for airport noise contours. And so this is and oddly, that's the most distant future projection that we have from the airport. So that this is future contours. And I've repeatedly asked, and I'm not sure why it's here, I think to comply with the government code, we should have the existing noise contours, and those are readily available from the airport. They publish them every year. So there currently is an existing contour map just like this for 2024, and by the time the general plan is published, there will be one posted for 2025. So if this is the future contours, they're not very far in the future, I think we should, to be honest, have the current ones as well. They turn out to be a little skinnier and a little bit longer than these are. So in some areas there's more noise currently, and in some areas less. But the state mandate is to show existing and future, so I think we should increase the number of this to be figure N4, and we should slip in an N3, which is the existing noise contours. So I can pause there and ask those who are not on the subcommittee if you have any questions about the contour maps or think that that's a reasonable idea.
First off, I don't see any difference between these two maps. So would somebody tell me what the difference is? Just tell me where to look, and then I'll see the difference.
Please.
Sorry, is that working? So I can tell you the maps are different. I know that our acoustician had pointed out one roadway segment that it was notably different. But the thing that you're looking at for kind of to this point on the traffic conditions and the existing noise contours, I did want to just confirm that our team did go out and do noise modeling to verify the numbers. But the exact places where the maps differ, I would have to ask our acoustician.
Well, that is most critical. It says the first one says existing traffic noise contours, but the other one says it says GPHE, which stands for
General plan housing element.
okay. And then the other question I had, which was just about a term that you can probably answer very quickly. What are sensitive receptors?
Sensitive receptors are things like residential uses, daycares, schools, places where people would be for a long term that may be sensitive to loud noises.
As opposed to just being a resident, a normal run-of-the-mill person, this would be something that would have a higher level of sensitivity?
A normal run-of-the-mill person, such as a resident. But we here in this building are not necessarily a sensitive receptor. If there's a daycare here and children are here throughout the day, children would be considered to be more sensitive, but and residents would be considered to be sensitive.
Or maybe more extreme, a hospital or something would even be more extreme. more
Not even
sensitive.
necessarily a hospital, actually, but yeah, to that end, you're more sensitive to noises in your home than you would be maybe in your office, for example, because in your home you're trying to sleep and you're trying to relax.
At the office too. No.
Yeah, and then children are also kind of on a higher level of sensitivity than adults. Yeah.
Can I ask just one definition question? What is receiving use? What does that mean?
Receiving means it's not putting out the noise, it's receiving the noise.
Okay.
So a sensitive receptor would be a receiving use.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Jim, you want to continue?
Yeah, so I do think there is a need to update the label on figure N2. GPHE is not going to be apparent to people what that means. And if that is the general plan housing element build out, I think that would be a lot clearer to people to spell it out what it is.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. We can clean up the label. Easy. Thank you.
And now proceeding to the policy part of this, this actually starts with a couple of tables, the first of which is on handwritten page 29. Every noise element of every other city I've looked at has a very similar table. And this is defining the areas in which various land uses can be considered for approval. And it's referring to something called a CNEL, which is a long-term noise exposure measure, representing the exposure over at least the course of an entire day and often over the course of an entire year. So it's a kind of an average noise level. And levels of like 65 decibels are unpleasant to people. So that this is showing that the letters in the table are indicating whether it's clear that a land use would be allowed, whether it needs extra scrutiny, that's B, whether it needs especially strong scrutiny, which is C, or whether it shouldn't be allowed at all, which is D in the table. And then there's footnotes to it on the next page that explain more what it's about. I have no problem with that table, except it should label that the noise levels it's talking about are the exterior noise levels. I believe that's the intent. So at the top of the table, I think it should say exterior CNEL. The table that I have a lot of trouble with, and I explained to Ben, and they've been trying heroically to correct it, but it still doesn't make much sense to me, is the next table on page 31. In our current land use element, the title at the top just says noise standards. Now it says noise standards for exposure to exposed to the exterior, and then it says it's for non-transportation noise. All of this is extremely confusing, and I should explain that the first table that you saw here with the A's and the B's and the C's in it, defining where land uses are compatible, in the old noise element from 1994, that was followed by a companion table which listed these various land uses, and for each of them specified what the interior noise standard was in CNEL for those land uses, and also the acceptable exterior noise levels in CNEL. Somehow that, and in that 1994 noise element, I should explain, noise policy in general is defined partly by the general plan, but more by the municipal code. And the 1994 policies directed the city to develop a community noise control ordinance in our municipal code, which tells people what is an allowable kind of noise that you can generate when you're bothering a neighbor, And that's what this table is trying to explain. Non-transportation noise is somebody making too much noise from their house. It's a restaurant making too much noise. Incompatible land uses of that sort. And we have different standards for the daytime and the nighttime, and different standards for inside and outside. All of these are code enforcement issues that don't fit, that they fit with the fourth goal here of responding to non-transportation noise sources. But they're not a good planning tool, and they don't serve the purpose that that old table that got disappeared served. So I think a mistake was made in 2006 to copy the municipal code into the noise element and drop the table, which actually was the noise standards, in CNEL, which possibly duplicates the building code, but those are the actual noise standards. I have the, and so this is trying to explain the municipal code, but it can't explain it totally. It leaves out things like construction noise is exempt from this. There's a bunch of footnotes here. I would suggest that all of this belongs in the municipal code, not here, and we should probably restore the table that we had, which mimics the building code of what the actual interior and exterior noise levels are, and not go into this detail. These are noise for 15-minute intervals during the daytime that somebody is violating our noise code. And I think this is really the wrong table. So I would suggest, rather than referring to this one, that we just refer to the municipal code where this table was referred to in that part about non-transportation noise. And this is how we handle non-transportation noise, but it belongs, I think, in the municipal code. And the first part of the policies refer to this table, starting on the next page, which is handwritten page 32. That those of you not on the subcommittee will be surprised by my disorganized and almost incomprehensible way of expressing myself, but the committee members are familiar with it.
We really didn't want to have something adopted in this plan that would contradict. We just didn't want to have anything in this plan contradict what was already in the municipal plan. So the goal in our last meeting that I was on the telephone with you all was that we'd either eliminate it so it wasn't part of it, or it would parallel the municipal code. But I think the general consensus in that meeting was, look, let's not even state it. If it's already covered in the municipal code, let that be the guiding light. And that's what I recall.
Yeah. That is accurate, I believe. So, but I do think for the first section of the policy, community where noise impacts are reduced and compatibility between land use is monitored, that former table that somehow got lost should be in here. And so when we go to the next page, handwritten page 32, it says require the proposed project to be compatible with the noise environment through the use of table N2, and that is the table with the A, B, C's, and D's, and enforce the interior and exterior standards shown in table N3. I don't think it's supposed to be this 15-minute standards. I think that's talking about the standards in that old table, which mimics probably the building code in most cases. So I think this table N3 should be replaced by the one of interior and exterior CNEL levels from the previous table, which I think mimicked the building code. And I think that was what this was trying to say originally, and it was not trying to refer to this 15-minute enforcement stuff. And that brings us on the next page, page handwritten 33, to policy N 1.3, remodeling and additions to structures, require that all remodeling and addition to structures comply with the noise standards shown in table N3. Again, the existing N3, I don't understand what it would be trying to do. I think that's trying to refer to that it has to comply with the interior exterior building code type standards, which is what that previous table was. So I think if we just substitute it, that would work. And then another one that I have a big trouble with is on handwritten page 34. And this is setting levels of significance for a noise increase. So that table of building code standards, which had got lost but I think should be restored, is telling somebody how soundproof they have to make a structure, whether it's an office building or a residential building or a school or whatever. Those are the interior standards that they need to build the structure to. This one has to do with the impact of that new structure or use on existing people nearby. And this has gotten garbled, I think. It's trying to say that a proposal for a new project is not supposed to produce a significant increase on existing uses that are nearby. And this had a simple language in our current one, and I think we should just stick with that. It's gotten more and more confused here. And I'm not explaining clearly, but I don't think it should be adapted from. I think we should just carry over the policy. This is the one policy that is referred to over and over in essentially every environmental impact report prepared in Newport Beach, which says that the project has to avoid a significant noise increase. They all refer to this policy N 1.8, so I appreciate that we've managed to keep the number the same, but I think the language should be kept the same. The way it's written now, it sounds like if there's a significant increase, it's up to the existing sensitive user to somehow mitigate that. So somebody puts in a car wash next to my house, I'm obligated to mitigate that. It's kind of reversed and completely changed the meaning from what it says now.
Yeah, the debate oftentimes in the meeting was if the car wash happened to be there before the residential got built. So who gets more rights? I mean, there was spirited debate in a lot of our discussions. And I think one of the examples also was used was a particular plating operation that was occurring, in the city of Newport Beach. It's like, well, he's been operating that for the last several decades. Now there's a residential project close by. Who are we gonna tie down even further? So there was a lot of spirited debate and a fair amount of compromise during those discussions.
Yeah. So I think the existing language is clearer on that, and as Tony was trying to say, that the essence of it is if the car wash was not there and goes in next to my house, it's the responsibility of the car wash developer to make sure that they are not significantly increasing the noise environment at my house. And that it now literally says the opposite of that, require noise mitigation measures for the existing sensitive use. Sounds like the existing user is responsible for that, which is not the intent. So I think that needs to be clarified, and I think the existing language kind of is already clear. And the following policy, which is a new one on handwritten page 35, review the city's noise ordinances upon adoption of this noise element. I think that's a very good thing, but it should be ordinances with an S, because the existing noise regulations in the municipal code are found in multiple different parts of the code, and there's many different ordinances. I shouldn't say many. There are 3 or 4 different ordinances that refer to that. And I hope I'm not boring people too much. Another revision that should be made, I think, Dudek's intent, like I said, was to put all the narrative having to do with a particular set of goals before those goals and policies. And we come to handwritten page 36. We'll see it's talking at the top about automobiles and so forth, and it's talking about water vehicles, and then it talks about aircraft operations, and the policies that follow that are about the motor vehicles and the boat noise. So the paragraphs that have to do with aviation operations and emerging aviation technologies, those need to be shifted in front of the next goal, which is on handwritten page 38. So a couple of paragraphs there need to be moved to be ahead of the goal that they're actually related to. And on that next page where that goal starts, handwritten page 38, the first policy that comes under that is an exact repeat of something that was said in policy N1.5A on an earlier page. And to keep the numbering the same, I don't think there's any need to repeat it, because it's on page 34, the first policy up there. 1.5A, the last part of that, this is the exact repeat of that. And I said no policy had been removed. Actually, this did remove a policy, which was that we were to keep the noise contours for the airport up to date. And I think probably we should restore that. That there's no need to repeat this 2 times, the exact same language. And I think policy N3.1 should be something about the need to update the noise contours as new ones become available for the airport.
Sorry, Mr. Chair of the subcommittee, that actually is policy N-3.11, updated airport noise contours. So that was not stricken, just to be clear.
I
It could be moved to, yes.
had a question on the one you mentioned, which was a policy, well, it's N2.5, I think you looked at, is a new policy. And I'm confused as to why the police department is involved rather than the harbor department or the harbor patrol. The police department is hardly going to be out there monitoring noise.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot to mention that policy N2.5. Paul Watkins has provided a number of helpful and useful additions to this. This is about boating activity. This had encouraged the enforcement of the municipal code noise limits for boating activity through coordination with the Newport Beach Police Department. Paul mentioned the Harbor Patrol and the Sheriff's Department Harbor Patrol. I mean, if we're coordinating, I would think we would be coordinating with everybody that has to do with boats. So I would think it would be the police department, the harbor department, and the Sheriff's Harbor Patrol, all that we want to coordinate with. I'm not sure why it just said police department. No. Would people agree with that?
And Ben, I'm looking at page 39, and I know I made a comment specific to policy N 3.5, and that was I thought we were striking that paragraph, oppose any attempt to construct a second air carrier runway, including acquisition of land, extension of runways, et cetera. And I thought we were going to simply have any guidance on that and drive any limitations based upon the noise that it would produce, not necessarily how they would redesign a taxiway or runway.
As a subcommittee, it was discussed that the policies surrounding the operations at John Wayne Airport would remain as they are today in the noise element and be carried forward. And there's a discussion about maybe the aviation committee being more appropriate to take those policies on at a future time because they interrelate to settlement agreement and other things that are beyond the general plan update. And maybe I missed that, but that was our.
Yeah, to clarify this, I am personally, and Tom also, I think, is personally very interested in the airport policies, but these are mostly just copied from something called City Council Policy A17, which is really the purview of the City Aviation Committee to be recommending changes to that. And unfortunately, they just got reconstituted. They had an organizational meeting. They won't be meeting again until the end of January, so it's kind of hard to get their input on how these noise policies should be changed regarding the airport. And so as Ben pointed out, there is a policy N3.11 on handwritten page 40 about reviewing and substituting new projected new airport contours when they become available. And it's unfortunate we don't have projections very far in the future, but they will become. And so that could be substituted for the first one, which was redundant, as Ben said, and would keep the numbering. Almost done. And so then we come to the section about stationary noise sources on handwritten page 43. This is the fourth goal. And these are kind of for nuisance noise from air conditioning, from restaurants, entertainment, parking facilities, so forth. And those are referring to this table in 3, which, as I pointed out, it's trying to summarize the municipal code, but very imperfectly, because the municipal code has many nuances to it that are not in that table. And so I think the references to table N3 should just be referring to the noise policies, noise standards in the municipal code. And again, that table could be replaced with one actually giving building standards. So throughout those, it just can refer to the municipal code rather than a table, I believe. And then finally, the section on construction noise is new. The existing, and so that if you look at handwritten page 45, you'll see goal 5 at the top. Construction activities are managed to prevent excessive noise impacts. And the only existing policy was the one in yellow at the very top, which simply limited the hours of construction to those hours allowed in the municipal code. And the stuff in green is new. And Paul would be, again, the members of the committee have not seen this before it was posted on Friday. And I'm sure Paul would be happy to say, these actually, I think the first 2 were policies. Now it just says, consider implementing a requirement for the vibration standards. And it's considering the implementation of in policy N5.3, consider the implementing a limit on noise averaged over an 8-hour period. And then it comes to the best practices, and this one actually you will see on the screen up there that looking at the Long Beach noise element, I saw a number of others seemed like best practices, that to be a good neighbor, somebody doing construction could be implementing. And I actually overlooked that in the Long Beach policy, which I thought this one was also, that's just simply a laundry list of things that the city should recommend to construction people. It's not a requirement that they do any of the best practices. And the DUDEC language here, to me, is making it sound like this is a mandatory requirement that you utilize all these best practices. I'm not sure if Tony saw that when it was here.
I did too, because I thought we all recognized in particular our last meeting that much of the construction noise was in fact temporary. So we weren't going to impose, martial law on the contractor. So that's where I thought we were going to see this diluted significantly.
Yeah, the Long Beach noise element, as an example, just says encourage the use of best practices. And then that would tie in with my first suggestion, which I also got from the Long Beach noise element, is that we improve communication by developing something on our website that informs the public and construction people and so forth of what our goals and policies are regarding noise in Newport Beach, and what is a violation of our noise, where you can find the ordinances, and a web page like that, and instruction to people. The intent, as in the Long Beach noise ordinance, I thought, was just to publicize and encourage these are things, as a good neighbor, it would be helpful for a construction person to be doing.
We went further because we recognized that the contractor that was doing a remodel that was lasting 2 years or 3 years was more of a nuisance than the guy that was dropping in 6 caissons and he was gone in 30 days. So that's why I thought that, much of this was going to be recommended and not necessarily imposed as a requirement. So maybe it's important that we go back to those minutes on those last meetings and confirm that.
And to clarify, I don't think it's necessary. We can easily change utilize to encourage best practices, and that softens it immediately. And then also just pointing out, as Chair Moser pointed out, that the preceding policies on vibration and construction noise over an 8-hour period are softened to consider implementation. So it'd be up to the council to implement a stringent limitation on those if they wanted to do so. It's just an option.
So are you going to ask, are you going to ask for a vote on any of these things?
Yes. Yeah, so I think as Ben said, as I read it, the first two here, which were measures, now it's just say consider implementing them, so the council has the option of in the municipal code making this a city policy or requirement regarding the vibration and regarding a limit to average noise over a period of time, so that there would be some limit, which we currently have no noise limit as long as the construction is occurring during the hours. And the last one, the best practices, I think we said that's something to encourage by telling people to try to do that if they can, but it's not a requirement. So anyway, I have more than bored everybody, I'm sure. So
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
of the people that are active in construction right now? So when we're talking about vibrations, vibration can be completely different on the peninsula, for instance, where I live, where 2 places across the street are, getting their caissons pounded in, versus, I don't know, help me out, like maybe Upper Back Bay or Newport Coast, where there's more of like a solid ground that they're going into. And I know they still have to do caissons up in Newport Coast for like pools and stuff. So how do we, like, is this just nitpicky to try and figure out there's some places that are more highly susceptible to vibrations, like for instance when caissons are being drilled for and then pounded down into in different areas of Newport Beach? Does that make sense? Like, do you have an answer?
Yes, yeah, it makes sense. I think the DUDEC consultant was pointing out here that these are accepted standards for wherever you are. If the vibration is producing this amount of shaking, it's going to upset your house, depending on whether your house is old, new, or what kind of construction it is. And that would be guidance for the City Council to consider putting in our municipal code, actually using something like standards like this. And if there are area-specific nuances to that, the municipal code can deal with that.
It adjusts to where it's being done. Okay.
It adjusts particularly to what kind of building is being impacted by the vibration. And not being a geotechnical engineer myself, I assume the amount of vibration produced is going to depend somewhat on the substrate that you have there.
Thank you. I guess the concern I have is how do we get to yes? When I read the noise element, I thought it was really well done. I thought the committee and Jim and Dudek, I thought put together a pretty dang good element. It appears that Jim has some lingering concerns, as Anthony, I guess, does as well, perhaps others on the committee. But I think we could be here for quite some time tonight if we are each of us to understand the good comments that Jim has made. So I'm kind of looking for process, I guess, if I were to give a little bit of input. Is there a process that we could get to yes by asking Jim and maybe Anthony and maybe Ben and maybe Nancy and maybe Dudek by Zoom or otherwise to sit down and say, hey, we hear the comments, we hear the additional tables that need to be added and whatnot, and have a high-level discussion by those folks, and then to make a decision and move forward. That's the concern. The comments are very good, but you know I'm not sure we can achieve perfection, and so what I'm trying to do is get to a position where we hear, understand, acknowledge, and try to compromise on certain items, and then because I'm a little bit in the dark on some of the things, my guess is that some of the rest of our committee is in the dark, get a high-level group together that can be understood, give input, and ultimately make a decision and get this thing across the finish line.
I would comment really that I would say that there's probably 10 or 12 subcommittees. And with those subcommittees, we trust those people on the subcommittee to do their job, and we do our best to endorse them. So when Jim and Tom and myself and staff argue and debate and compromise, we did a lot. And I'd probably say I compromised the most because I'm not that sensitive to noise. And if I could extend the runway, I would. I mean, there are a lot of things that I would do. And, you know, again, we compromised on a lot of things. So if that's what it takes for Jim, Tom, myself, Ben, and Dudek to get together and just iron out these, but I don't think Jim is asking for anything more than clarification on a couple of items. So we're not changing the scope of this document.
Yeah, I guess if I can chime in, Madam Substitute Co-Chair, which thank you, Assistant too. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. So from what I heard from Jim, and I can look to Elizabeth for confirmation, but nothing was alarming in terms of, as you said, Tony, changing the scope. A lot of it is refinement for clarity. And I think terminology is important, obviously, with, like, for example, the question was asked about sensitive receptors, receiving uses. I think those would be defined in the glossary for the general plan. And honestly, when it's online, you should be able to click those terms if they are, I would hope, linked to the glossary to find right away what that means. So I think a lot of what I'm hearing from Chair Mosier are cleanup items that are not necessarily concerning to me. In terms of moving this forward procedurally, the recommended action before you this evening is to provide feedback on Chair Mosier and the subcommittee's efforts, and then conduct a vote to consider supporting this moving forward to the steering committee. What I would suggest or offer as a consideration for GPAC, this is something that has been done on multiple elements. We can take direction to make changes between now and going to the steering committee and provide a red line strikeout version of this version that is now cleaned up with additional red line strikeouts to address comments made this evening. So if we got clarity and trust from the GPAC to move forward, another option would be to move it forward beyond GPAC, but turn it back to the subcommittee to make refinements before it goes to the steering committee. There are a couple options if you do want to consider moving this forward this evening. I think I just want to say again that I think the subcommittee has done a phenomenal job refreshing this, especially on a later track. And I think a lot of great work has been done. I agree it's probably not perfect, but at a minimum, it does give us an impetus to update the long overdue noise ordinance, which we'll get into a lot of the particulars, and give us good enforcement measures to go off of. So I think there's a lot of good coming from this. And I know that when Elizabeth and I presented the overview on new policies, I think the one that talks about updating the noise ordinance in short order and reviewing it periodically is a really good addition. Because again, when was the noise ordinance last updated, Jim? Quizzing you.
We have to get this moving along.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that if there is something that people object to, if you've seen a policy, particularly the policies, is there a policy that you say it's missing or that you disagree with, then let's discuss that. Otherwise, in principle, I mean, I sat through the committee, subcommittee meetings. They were very, very intensive. Tony, is he right? He did compromise a lot, but he brought a different perspective for everybody, and that was very valuable. We've done this before. You have done this, you've taken the element, you've listened to the subcommittee, you've made a few comments, and then you've passed it on, and this is what I recommend you do. The cleanups, we've always done that. Hey, it's not perfect. DUDEC comes back with another cleaned up version. It comes to us, and we move it on. So let's do something tonight. I would encourage you.
Testing. I'm Chuck Fancher. I'm not a committee member, but I've been observing this process from day one at the GPAC and the steering committee, and I've observed during the other elements in this process where there's been aspirational statements or values that are inputted in, an example being in whichever element it was, on the electrification of our mobility systems for cars, and we talked about batteries, and then we introduced the notion that it's not just batteries, it could be hydrogen fuel and other ways that could become commercially acceptable, and those should be facilitated by the city of Newport as they become commercially acceptable. Where I'm going to is under your aircraft operations on page 36. Would it be of value for Jim's committee to consider recognizing that as technology changes in the development of aircraft mechanisms, that the city be open to facilitating the adoption of those facilities if the city has a role to play? The example is the electric engine in the aircraft is at a nascent stage now, but it is changing quickly. And in time, it will be competitive with the carbon fuel motors to operate airplanes, certainly on lower range trips, and in the parallel to the hybrid automobile, a combination of electric and carbon fuel is also being explored to give it greater range. And it may prove to be an economic solution that the airplane finds. So the only point is just to recognize that there could be change in technology, and the city should try to facilitate it if it reduces noise.
And I think that's where the subcommittee really kind of centered a lot of their discussion on, is if we want to regulate anything, we regulate noise, not regulate the technology. So, and if that means a particular aircraft needs to have a longer runway, because we have 2 runways there, then so be it. Let them do their runway. So, I mean, again.
David?
One more suggestion, or not, for the map, and I know people have referenced Long Beach. I've referenced Long Beach's zoning code and general plan many times. The reason I think theirs is so big is in many places they'll break up a map like this into square miles in the city, and it's readable. To me, this is almost irrelevant. If there's a way that we can break this up into square miles or 4, 5, 6 sections of the city, so it's actually readable, then I probably wouldn't have bought the house that I bought right now. So it's for the record.
Debbie?
Is this on? Okay. Quick question either for Dudek or for Ben. The comment about table N3, how do you see solving that? Or do you agree with Jim's comments?
Do you want to go first, Elizabeth, and I can add?
Yeah, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. And I know we had a discussion around the table under policy 1.8, and we had removed that in the previous iteration, and the discussion was to include that table. As far as table N3, in terms of removing it, if we were to remove it, and I of course will have that discussion with Ben, because a lot of that depends on how they're using that in practice. But we would just then make sure that we are going through those policies that reference that table and saying basically per the city's municipal code. So that would be like the quick fix if we're just removing it.
Yeah, and then I think Chair Mosher also made a suggestion of replacing with a table from the California Building Code instead, so we can look at that as well. I think there's multiple remedies, and we can sort that out. I think a very good faith effort was made to clean up the table and make it more usable. And I have to, at some point, trust an acoustician who does this for a living. No offense to Chair Mosher, but I think that looking at the acoustician's recommendations for how to do this in practice is important to us. So we can definitely revisit to either insert the California Building Code table or omit and instead have this live within the municipal code, because to Elizabeth's point, in the subcommittee meeting, we had a very good discussion about not duplicating tables to where you should have something living in the municipal code to be more agilely updated over time versus in the general plan to require a general plan amendment to update that table. So that's kind of a couple ways to fix that. I don't know if that gives you any good feelings or concern.
And I'm not sure if, I know we did a noise study this year, 2025, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see it referenced anywhere in here. If that's not the case, there's a reason why it wasn't? Or
So I can tell you that there's just a document that's not included in the noise elements. So our technical team went out, they did noise modeling at various locations. All of that is documented. It's supplemental information, and that information, I'm sure Ben can send it out to the group. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it's a technical appendix, I would call it, that talks about the methodology surrounding how they measure noise. So it's largely factual on the methodology that the consultant followed. It's not providing any policy direction or anything like that. It's literally just saying, this is how we accomplished or achieved these roadway contours, which I agree with the comment that putting these into more bite-sized maps would be a good way to go. And then just thinking in the future, we are still looking to see if we can have dynamic. I know we don't want everything to be online sometimes, but having a dynamic map where you can zoom in to your house on these contours, I think that's really the way that we're looking to go, rather than having these static PDFs to be updating every time we make a change.
Yeah, I agree. I was just thinking also that, a footnote to maybe the study that was, paid for and done this year, if it's applicable, it can be on the website somewhere.
No further discussion, so do we have James? Please.
And just for clarification, the recommended action includes direction on these additional policies on the screen here, whether to include all of them. I know Mr. Watkins submitted some comments that expressed a little bit of concern about the additional language being added, but perhaps with the softening of the initial language, it says encourage these rather than using them. Maybe that makes you happy, Paul, not sure. But I think the recommendation or the motion should include whether or not these additional policies and language be included as well.
I agree.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're moving into updates and overview of upcoming deliverables objectives.
All right, Madam Assistant Substitute Co-Chair. So I'll go ahead and take these slides. So I wanted to provide some really exciting updates on the draft elements. As you know, you've all made substantial progress on moving the draft elements along. We have had open houses to advertise and get the word out about those draft elements being available for online review. We did have October 21st an in-person meeting here, which for those of you who attended got some excitement of a gentleman falling, and we had to attend to him. So thank you to committee member Elmore, who did a medical assessment on someone in this room, making sure he was okay to drive. So that was very exciting. Probably the most exciting component of the general plan update, to be frank. We also had a virtual open house the next day, which is recorded and available on the city's YouTube channel. As of today, there's about 44 views, so we're kind of somewhere between a planning commission and a city council meeting, which I think is a decent place to be. We've had 67 unique comments come through the website, which I think is pretty good. And we had 13 live participants across those two. But again, the online version was recorded, posted onto YouTube, and shared out through the city manager's week in review. So hopefully we'll continue to get some good traction there. Let's see, next slide. So again, in terms of getting the word out, these are just some updated statistics that we got from Cairns and West today. So we've had about 12,300 views on our social media posts, and this is just between September 5th and October 31st, so about a 2-month span. I think that's pretty good. 1,300 unique views of the project website, so pretty good uptick there. I believe the overall unique views on the project website is climbed close to 13,000 now since the span of the projects. We've had about 13,000 unique visitors come to the website. We have about 3,300 recipients of the city manager's newsletter, but that does not, of course, account for being cross-posted into Stu News, so people can see the city manager's newsletter in Stu News and engage that way. And then Cairns and West has been really good about pushing out newsletter updates from Newport Together project site about the availability of the draft elements for review. So we've been trying our best to get the word out to continue getting some good comments on the draft elements. I guess I'd pause if there are any questions.
I just wanted to make one quick comment, which was I thought that the materials that you and Dudek put together for the open houses was really good. I wish more people would have been there to see it, but I thought you guys did a really good job at making it look pretty and making it look readable and all that kind of good stuff. So I meant to say that earlier, but anyway, I thought you guys did a very good job.
Thank you. It was unfortunate we were competing with Sin City or the Robert Gardner documentary there. But yes, I appreciate that. And we did, at the open house, community member Stevens had a good suggestion to post the pretty sort of boards that were here and available. They weren't sort of boards. Sorry, Nancy corrected me. She said that I said sort of a lot in front of words, and now I'm hypersensitive to it. So I'm really trying to fix that. I am fixing that. So we had boards in the room, and okay, thanks, Nancy. Trying. We had boards in the room that have now been posted on the website in PDF format to provide a very nice, pretty list of all the goals for reference, and that's along with the YouTube link, and everything is now still available for comment. So if you've got people who have been interested and maybe just haven't had the opportunity, encourage them to comment. Again, we've had 67 unique comments, which I think is pretty good. In terms of next steps, so one thing is we are looking to share an initial refresh draft of the implementation program with the GPAC through email, just for initial review and to get you familiar with what that looks like. It is going to be in red line strikeout format to show the changes from the current implementation program. Honestly, the current implementation program is pretty good. It's just poorly organized and poorly structured to where you don't have who's responsible for what, supporting departments, good night, Mr. Fancher, and action terms like short-term, near-term, or short-term, mid-term, long-term. So that will be coming to you all to start reviewing. We'd look to talk about that in December. Now that we have the noise element, given some guidance from you all on the noise element, we'll look to revise that and schedule a steering committee meeting perhaps later this month. If not, we can conduct that at our December meeting with you all. Looking to, again, get comments on the initial drafts of all the elements that have been posted by November 17th. And then we'll compile those and share those individually with all the subcommittees via email. So something will be coming to you as some good reading material just before the Thanksgiving holiday to familiarize yourself with the comments. We're going to organize them in a very structured way to where it's a comment based on a goal within an element. And if we have any notes from staff on what our thoughts are on that comment, such as something that is illegal, we'd flag that for you all just so you know that that's something we wouldn't recommend pursuing. Then December 3rd, we're targeting that as our last GPAC meeting for this year. We want to keep to that schedule if we can so that we can avoid the holiday season, at least the December holiday season as much as possible. We'll look to you all to provide any comments or any guidance on the comments that have been received. So if as a subcommittee you flag something that requires further discussion, I'd look for that to be brought here and windowed with the GPAC. And then we would really look to come back mid-January next year to share what would hopefully be the final draft of the 2050 general plan and its content for y'all to consider supporting moving that forward to the various city boards, commissions, and committees for formal support. On that note, we have been, again, going through all the various city boards, commissions, and committees. We've gotten formal comments so far from Water Quality Coastal Tidelands, thanks to Kurt Black. We've gotten comments from PB&R Commission. We've gotten comments from, well, Board of Library Trustees says good job and gave us a pat on the back. There were no comments from the Harbor Commission is coming. That's actually next week. They're going to provide their formal comments, yeah. And then Planning Commission is meeting again on the land use element, safety element later in November. So a lot of activity. I think it's very important to acknowledge how much work that you've all put into this, and hopefully you're excited to see it through towards the middle of next year when we would look to have council consider adopting the general plan. I know this is a ton to digest, so if you don't have a question right now and you have a question after you get home, always happy to talk. If there's a question now, I'm happy to field that as well.
Just one process question. So if we're getting compiled comments on the 18th, shared at the subcommittee level, is there an action at the subcommittee level to meet between then and the 3rd to finalize an opinion on what should be included and what shouldn't? I would imagine some like interfusion of how those comments hit the drafts is probably important. or is that done here? Because it could be a busy meeting if it's done here on the 3rd.
I would foresee it being agile in the sense that it depends on what comments are received on which element. And what I mean by that is I would more proactively, when we get the comments organized, share them with the subcommittee by email again on the 18th, and probably reach out to the chair of each subcommittee to go over the comments and see if it's worthwhile to set up a Teams meeting, something virtual. I think we need to be more agile, and we can't focus on in-person hybrid meetings if there's no room available. We might just want to meet via Teams and walk through them together ahead of the GPAC meeting. That's something that I could foresee being very beneficial, but if there's only 2 comments received on one of the respective elements, I don't know that it's beneficial to meet unless it's a very significant comment. So I would work with each subcommittee chair, if that sounds appropriate to you all, to see if to gauge whether or not a meeting is necessary.
Any other questions? Jim?
Yeah, each of the boards, commissions, and committees that have been asked to comment have been given not only the draft element, but also the technical background reports that went with those. And so some of them have asked if the November 17th deadline for comment, are we still expecting comments on the background reports? Because I know, for instance, the Arts Commission didn't think that they thought there were some inaccuracies in those. Are we still trying to correct those, or are they frozen kind of as they were presented?
So the way that we've been describing the existing conditions and background analysis reports is something that supports the policies that are being interjected, and Elizabeth can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are really a snapshot in time that are supposed to be factual and objective based on the time that they were prepared to help inform those policies. So it wasn't envisioned that those would be updated. However, when we're presenting to the boards, commissions, and committees and meeting with their ad hoc committees, we're letting them know that if there is something within those reports that gives them pause or is grossly inaccurate, then they should identify it and flag it as something that we should look to update. However, based on what we've been seeing so far, none of the boards, commissions, or committees have gone to that level of detail. And we would look to post those existing conditions, background analysis reports as sort of a technical appendix to support various elements. So it would be the land use existing conditions background analysis report would be available by link to the land use element online, so you could dive in deeper about some of the policies that are that have been published on that element, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. If we see inaccuracies in them, should we be letting you know?
You can. If it's something that's simple to update, we could probably do that, right, Elizabeth?
Especially if it's impacted a policy that's been put together, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to be used as the policy. So if there's something in the background report that is false and it's informed a policy, then absolutely we want to hear that, because we want to be sure that the policies are built on a strong foundation.
And I'll give an example. Like the City Arts Commission identified that one of the council policies listed in the existing conditions background analysis report was amended literally within a month or two of that report being prepared. So something like that may want to consider updating. I don't think it changed a policy, but for the record, it might be nice to have the latest and greatest council policy reflected in that report. Thanks, Jim.
Any additional questions? Then we'll move on to committee announcements and matters for members would like to be placed on future agendas. Are there any? Please.
Is it on? I mentioned this early on, or several meetings ago, the concept of an elevated bike lane. And I would like it revisited in light of the fact that there's been, e-bike fatalities. And I know that there's been a lot going on and policy to mitigate or to, advance safety with bike lanes and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, I think we all know in our hearts that the major thoroughfares of Jamboree and MacArthur and maybe even Newport Coast, where the speed limit is freeway speed limit, is not really compatible with bikers or teenagers or children that are on e-bikes. So unless the city is willing to make e-bikes illegal here, we're going to continue to see horrible accidents unless we think a little bit outside the box and look at progressive options. And I would like that perhaps presented for council consideration. I do understand there's funding from the county level the transportation department for things of that nature, possibly. So it might be worth presenting at this juncture, since this is our golden opportunity to do so.
There is a working committee of the council, which is presenting all sorts of new policies to the council, and I think that's where probably at this point the focus should be.
And Rita, just to let you know, in fact, it was something that was on the council's agenda last night. So if you go watch that meeting, you probably would find something of interest on e-bike regulations. So they are actively addressing that outside of this effort.
Any additional comments before we ask for adjournment?
If I may, Madam Substitute Assistant Co-Chair, can we just do a quick straw poll to see if everyone is okay with this 4 o'clock starting time? The co-chairs had asked to do 4 o'clock for the remainder of the GPAC meetings. I just wanted to see, I think with the time change, it's kind of nice to have it at 4 o'clock, but just a quick straw poll. Yay for 4 o'clock? Nay for 4 o'clock? Is everyone okay? Okay, thank you for indulging me.
Motion to adjourn? We're adjourned.